Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News. Each week we get busier and busier, and Millbrook House is buzzing with new members, new activities, and every day things seem to change and increase. Karen and Abby have settled in so well as new members of staff, and Susan, Chris, Jasmine, Elaine and Martin are carrying on their usual duties, helping the new staff to settle in. It is always so lovely to welcome new members and talk to them about what we do here at Site Wight, and indeed introduce them to other members. We've got lots of activities coming up this week. Today, Saturday, is skating in Newport, where members are able to try ice skating with one-on-one support from volunteers. On Thursday, we've got our lunch at the college, which is already fully booked now, we're so pleased to say, with 50 people attending. And then on Saturday, it is the Site for Wight Christmas Fair. We've got lots of stalls and gifts and things for sale, many of which have been made by our members. These funds that are raised are so important, and also, of course, it helps to raise the profile of the charity so that people who don't know what we do can be introduced to us and know exactly how to get in touch with us. November seems to be flying through very quickly, and it will be December soon and Christmas will be upon us. 2021 has been a mixed year, but we are all very much looking forward to the Christmas celebrations and welcoming in 2022, where we hope the coronavirus will have a way less effect on what we do. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you, Lisa.
Hello everyone, this is Steve reading a story from On the Wight, headlined Isle of Wight Tech Firm Recognised at New Innovation Awards. The awards keep coming for Isle of Wight Firm Innovative Physics. A product invented by an Isle of Wight technology company has been named as the Data Science / Artificial Intelligence Innovation of the Year at the inaugural Innovation Awards in Portsmouth. Shanklin-based Innovative Physics impressed the judges with their hotspot locator, which uses gamma imaging technology to allow users to easily and safely identify and grade radiation contamination. The awards were organised by Portsmouth newspaper The News in association with Portsmouth City Council to celebrate the work of the most innovative businesses in Portsmouth and the surrounding region. Innovative Physics was thrilled to win the Data Science / AI Innovation of the Year award, which was sponsored by the University of Portsmouth. The award was accepted in person on the day by Peter Kittermaster, an application physicist at the company, with the rest of the team watching remotely via an online live link. Dr. Chris Worrell, Innovation Director at the University of Portsmouth, presented the award, with the judges noting the interesting, innovative, international nature of the technology company's work. He said, "It was fantastic to see all of the innovative ideas and technologies emerging along the South Coast, and winning the award for Data Science and AI Innovation of the Year was a great honour." The judges from the University of Portsmouth were impressed with our real-world applications and are extremely excited to see what the future holds for innovative physics.
This is Patrina reading an article from Island Echo. Councillor leader to take short period away after being taken unwell. The leader of the Isle of Wight Council, Laura P.C. Wilcox, is taking a short break from her duties to recharge her batteries, it has been announced. Councillor P.C. Wilcox was taken unwell on Wednesday's full council meeting. A spokesperson for the Alliance Group has said, "The thoughts of all members of the Alliance Group are with the leader of the council, Laura P.C. Wilcox." Laura has been working incredibly hard in recent months, leading our group and driving change in the council. At the beginning of our term, she was christened the Pocket Rocket, and she has more than lived up to that name. However, rockets occasionally need a break. Laura will be taking a short period away from council work to recover and recharge her batteries.
This is Michael reading an article from Island Echo. Got a spare £580,000? Sundown's popular The Bandstand restaurant goes up for sale. A popular restaurant in Sundown, which opened 6.5 years ago, following the complete renovation of an early 1900s bandstand, has gone on the market. The bandstand at Culver Parade, owned by Paul and Donna Rowling, is a sought-after location for diners, thanks to the stunning panoramic views across Sandown Bay, as well as the consistently tasty food produced by head chef Scott Stevens and his team. Purchased from the Isle of Wight Council in 2013, Paul and Donna started renovating the former bandstand and cafe in 2014, before opening the doors to customers just 7 months later, in April 2015. The building was originally built around 1910, but had sadly fallen into disrepair after a cafe in the downstairs section closed in the mid-1970s. The sympathetic work undertaken to transform the tired, abandoned building into an attractive restaurant saw the couple win a conservation award in 2016. After 2 challenging lockdowns, the restaurant has seen its busiest summer ever, employing some 19 staff at its peak. But now the time has come for the couple to move on. Paul has told Island Echo, "The restaurant has been our life for the past 7 years with the help of our dedicated team of staff. It's now time to move on and pursue other opportunities. We hope that when the bandstand is sold and new owners take over, that it remains a fantastic place to eat and socialise with some of the best views on the island." The bandstand has been placed on the open market with Gully Howard. Offers are invited in the region of £585,000 for the business, goodwill, fixtures, fittings, and a long leasehold of the bandstand building. Paul and Donna intend to stay on the island and have a few ideas of what they would like to do next, but it is all a wait and see.
8,000 Isle of Wight homes in fuel poverty from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Elaine. The local Footprint Trust charity has revealed approximately 8,000 homes on the Isle of Wight are in fuel poverty. This means that householders are spending over 10% of their incomes on heating poorly insulated homes. In any normal winter, millions of people struggle to stay warm at home. Rising energy costs, low incomes, and energy inefficient homes come together, leaving them in desperate situations where they can no longer afford to heat their homes, feed their families, and pay their rent. To highlight the choice between heating and eating that many islanders will face this winter, and in support of the National Fuel Poverty Awareness Day, the staff at the Footprint Trust will be taking part in a 24-hour fast on Friday, December the 3rd. Speaking for the Trust, Ray Harrington-Vale said, "Many families and pensioners are making the choice between heating and eating. The cold weather and lack of heat affects people's health and can lead them being admitted to hospital or worse. Those affected cope as best they can by cutting back on essentials, rationing energy use, and heading out to other warm places. But even then, it isn't always enough. 10,000 people die on average in the UK each year because of health conditions caused or worsened by living in a cold home, and fuel poverty is a known risk factor for suicide. If anyone is struggling with their utility bills this winter, then help is available. Call the Footprint Trust on 01983 82282.
Work to begin on new £5 million Isle of Wight primary school. From On the Wight, read by Chris. The new school will have capacity for 210 pupils and will combine All Saints Primary, Yarmouth Primary and Little Stars Preschool. Work on a new £5 million primary school in the West Wight is set to begin later this month. The new school will provide modern educational facilities on the site of the former All Saints CE Primary School, off School Green Road, Freshwater, which closed last year. The multi-million-pound development will provide a new home for Yarmouth CE (VA) Primary School and Little Stars Preschool, with capacity for around 210 pupils. The project is being jointly funded by the Isle of Wight Council and the Department for Education (DFE) through its Priority School Building programme. The Department for Education funding agreement includes the value of the land on which the current Yarmouth CE (VA) Primary School is located. The new building has been designed by Hampshire County Council Property Services, and the work will be carried out by contractor Morgan Sindall Construction. The estimated completion date is early 2023, with pupils and staff moving to their new premises later that year. Carla Bradshaw, Chair of Governors at Yarmouth CE (VA) Primary School, said, "We are really pleased that the project is moving forward, and we will be excited to see work begin in the coming weeks. Our pupils and staff deserve to learn and work in the best education facilities possible. The new school will make that a reality." The 13,035 square foot development, which received unanimous approval from planners last November, is single storey and features 7 classrooms, design and technology suites, a larger indoor hall and enhanced sports provision. Morgan Sindall Construction has delivered a number of similar projects and is currently working at the Bay CE School on the island. Cliff Kinch, Area Director, said the scheme would provide opportunities for local contractors and suppliers during the construction. He added, "We're very proud to be working with the Isle of Wight Council on delivering new educational facilities in the West Wight that are fit for the 21st century. The new school will have a vital role to play in the provision of first-class educational facilities for a new generation of pupils in the area." The Diocesan Director of Education for the Church of England's Portsmouth Diocese, Jeff Williams, said, "We're pleased that a brand new school building is being created. Working in partnership with the Council, this project demonstrates the Church of England's commitment to helping the children in this part of the West Wight, of all faiths and none, have the best possible start in life." Yarmouth CE (VA) Primary School and the Federation have a strong record of giving pupils an excellent standard of education, rooted in their Christian values, which we will support with continued commitment. Councillor Debbie Andre, Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Education and Skills, said the Council had a duty to make sure all children had access to good quality education in buildings that were well designed for their needs. She said, "We are committed to transforming education on the island, and I am pleased that we can continue this transformation with building this new school for the local community, which will, I'm sure, be much appreciated by all those who will use it. It will benefit and support our children to receive a high-quality education in a fantastic environment, giving them the best possible opportunities to grow, learn and succeed."
Hello, this is Steve reading a story from On the Wight, headlined "Sandown Town Council accused of censorship and unreasonable response to effective councillor scrutiny." The councillor says she has been told she is being investigated, but she has not been informed why it has been initiated and who will be conducting it. A Sandown Town Councillor has accused the Mayor, Councillor Paddy Lightfoot, of censorship and an unreasonable response to effective councillor scrutiny. Councillor Emily Brothers says that at Monday's Town Council meeting, the Mayor prevented her from making a statement and also refused to allow for a hard copy of her statement to be circulated to fellow town councillors as well as members of the public or the press who attended. Councillor Brothers told News on the Wight, "This is a form of censorship. During the meeting, the Mayor confirmed that an investigation into me is underway, but to date I have not been informed as to the terms of the investigation, why it has been initiated, and who will be conducting it. News on the Wight has emailed the Mayor and the clerks of Sandown Town Council a series of questions in relation to the incident, and will update once we hear back. Councillor Brothers went on to say, "I'm willing to cooperate with a fair and transparent investigation, enabling me to move forward in representing residents and ensure accountability for the electorate of Sandown. That's why I would like to make my statement clear and available for them to read." The statement that Councillor Brothers had intended to share at the meeting reads, "I received an email on the 10th of the 11th 21 from the Town Clerk, notifying that I would be subject to have 2 members of staff present at any future meeting, and a note taken of any discussion and future action, and this note shared with the Mayor. What power is being applied by the Town Clerk? No apparent process has been applied in reaching this decision. This is an unreasonable response to effective councillor scrutiny. I'm grateful to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor agreeing to meet me on the 11th, despite no resolution being reached. The Mayor agreed to clarify by the 15th of the 11th the status and authority for the Town Clerk's decision, which he endorses. No clarification has been received, so I now ask for clarification. Therefore, I will not adhere to the sanctions as no justification has been given for this action, and I do not believe them to be lawfully imposed. I referred the matter to the monitoring officer, who advises that his powers are limited to member conduct, not the process applied by a town council. Thus, no intervention is offered. I will continue to observe the members' code of conduct, whilst not accepting the Town Clerk's unfair restriction. I remain determined to speak up for positive change in Sandown, and will not be silenced by bullying and intimidation."
This is Michael reading an article from On the Wight. Share experiences of contacting your GP surgery and accessing support for new survey. A public survey has been launched to find out people's experiences of contacting their GP surgery and accessing support. Health Watch Isle of Wight, the independent champion for health and social care, is reaching out to the island community to hear from people directly about their experiences of accessing primary care. They would particularly like to hear about people's recent experiences after June this year. A public survey has been launched to find out people's experiences of contacting their GP surgery and accessing support. The survey results will be published in a report early next year, which will be shared with key services on the island, including the Hampshire, Southampton and Isle of Wight Clinical Commissioning Group, the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Integrated Care System and GP practices. The report will also be published and will be available to view on the Health Watch Isle of Wight website. Health Watch Isle of Wight manager Joanna Smith said the report would celebrate good practice as well as highlight any gaps in services. She said, GP services are often the first point of contact for anyone with a physical or mental health problem, and are the gateway to many other health services and specialities. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way that people access primary care, and we would like people to share their recent experiences, both positive and negative, by completing the survey. You will help us to build a picture of local services to help GP practices and commissioners identify what is working well for people and what needs to change. Full details of the survey can be found on Health Watch Isle of Wight website and Facebook page. Anyone who would require support to complete the survey should contact Health Watch Isle of Wight using the contact details above. Further contact details can be found on their website.
This is Patrina reading an article from Island Echo. Without them, I wouldn't be here today. Man praises efforts of air ambulance after God's Hill collapse. In July 2021, Gary and his wife Penny packed their bags and headed off to the Isle of Wight to visit friends and family. But it was a trip that would change their lives forever, and ended with Gary being airlifted to hospital in a critical condition. The Eastleigh couple, who have been married for 33 years, were enjoying a pub lunch at the Griffin in God's Hill when Gary's heart suddenly stopped. He had gone into cardiac arrest and was turning blue. One of their friends commenced CPR, but there was no sign of Gary responding. Two nurses, Gemma and Jo, who happened to be in the pub and saw the commotion, rushed to Gary's side. The absolute lifesavers, as Penny calls them, took over CPR, Penny recalls. We were shouting for him to come back and that he couldn't die now, but it was just a losing battle. I was so scared. There was nothing more that she, the nurse, could do. She couldn't keep him alive any more. Moments later, paramedics and doctors from Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Air Ambulance touched down in a nearby park and arrived on the scene. Penny says, "They were amazing. They took over the situation and they just knew what to do. They were so professional and caring, keeping me informed of everything they were doing to Gary." The HEMS team took over CPR, set up a Lucas mechanical CPR machine and loaded Gary into the helicopter before flying him directly to University Hospital Southampton. Gary says, "In the morning, me and my friend were going to go kayaking. It would have been a totally different story then. Penny's niece had recommended a cider farm and pub that was nearby, so we decided to go to the pub instead. I can't remember much about it. They tell me I wasn't quite being myself beforehand, so maybe something was really already happening." Gary was discharged from Southampton Hospital after 5 long weeks with an implantable cardioverted defibrillator, ICD, fitted, which monitors the heart in case of similar incidents in future. Now reflecting on the incident, Gary has spoken about his experience. He said, "Without them, I wouldn't be here today. There's no way I would have survived." It's not just Gary, adds Penny. Without the air ambulance, so many people would have lost their lives, and this has really brought it home. We didn't realise it was a charity. We always thought it was government funded, but we know how much they need our support. Thank God for the air ambulance, for Jo and for Gemma. Thankfully, it wasn't Gary's time.
Hello everyone, this is Steve reading a story from the Island Echo, headlined, "Drunk Pensioner was almost 3 times the limit on milk run to Tesco." A 73-year-old man from Ryde, who was caught driving whilst almost 3 times the drink drive limit as he popped to Tesco for a pint of milk, has been banned from the roads. Richard Fraser Tate of Marymead Close in Ryde appeared before the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday, after he failed to appear before the same court last Friday. A warrant was issued for his arrest and he was detained at home early on Monday morning. However, it was accepted that this was due to a possible COVID contact. Anne Smout, prosecuting, detailed that at 20 to 11 on 24th of October this year, Fraser Tate was spotted driving along Marlborough Road by on-duty police. They followed for a short distance and saw Fraser Tate swerving over the white line at a low speed of just 15 miles per hour, before then coming to a complete stop at an empty roundabout for approximately 15 seconds. The car, a red Fiat Panda, then continued into High Park Road and pulled up on double yellow lines. The court heard that Richard Fraser Tate had been drinking at the Simeon Arms pub that night, but needed a pint of milk. He decided to drive to Tesco. but when stopped by police, he provided a reading of 101 on the breathalyzer, increasing to 103 at the police station. Defending, Barry Arnott said that his client had been drinking whisky non-stop the day before, but had consumed just 1 pint at the pub. He affirmed that his client was compos mentis when stopped by officers and was fully cooperative, going on to say that Richard would not have driven if he knew he was over the limit. Mr. Arnott put a case forward that Fraser Tate was not suitable for any unpaid work requirement due to his ill health, having recently spent 10 weeks in hospital for a major heart operation. Magistrates handed the 73-year-old a 25-month driving ban, a 12-month community order with 15 rehabilitation days, and ordered him to pay a £120 fine, £85 costs, and a £95 surcharge.
Ticket to Ride, Sir Paul McCartney on how Ride inspired Beatles hit from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Elaine. Sir Paul McCartney has revealed the role Ride on the Isle of Wight played in inspiring the Beatles classic Ticket to Ride. It's long been rumoured that a visit to the town gave Sir Paul and John Lennon the idea for the 1965 hit, but has never been officially confirmed until now. Speaking at an event in London, Sir Paul recalled how he and John hitchhiked to the island to see his cousin. My cousin Betty and her husband Mike Robbins were very influential on me. I would say to John on this occasion, "Let's hitchhike somewhere," said Sir Paul. He would play along, so we ended up going down to the Isle of Wight Ride where they had a pub. They were always running pubs, so they moved around Reading and various other places, so we wrote Ticket to Ride with the play on words. Ride was spelt R-Y-D-E and we spelt it R-I-D-E. Sir Paul was appearing at the South Bank Centre to discuss his new book, The Lyrics, 1956 to the present. He was answering a question put forward by presenter Samara Ahmed on behalf of Islander Jack Chase from Ryde. Jack asked, "Growing up in Ryde on the Isle of Wight, can you talk a little bit about the influence that had on Ticket to Ride when you hitchhiked here with John, and any memories of the trip?" Sir Paul reminisced about the trip to the island and his love for Betty and Mike. He recalled how on one occasion the pair put the Beatles legends, who were both teenagers at the time, to bed. Sir Paul said, "They were down in Ryde, the kind of lovely little memories. The things that stick out are the silly little things. This was me and John, and they only have one guest room with one bed in it, so me and John have to top and tail in this bed. We're lying there ready to go to bed, and Bet and Mike would come in. They're grown-ups, and even though we were in our late teens, they would tuck us in." Ticket to Ride was released as a single in April 1965. It went on to become the Beatles' 7th consecutive number one hit in the United Kingdom and their 3rd consecutive number one hit in the United States.
This is Michael reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Plans for 100 homes in Gunville deferred over safety concerns. Plans for another major development in Gunville have been deferred following concerns over pedestrian safety and highway improvements. The Isle of Wight Council's Planning Committee on Tuesday night paused the decision on outline plans for more than 100 homes on Gunville Road, near to the former Friends of the Animals charity shop. All other details of the scheme, including layout, scale and appearance, would be determined at a later date. The plans were recommended for conditional approval by planning officers, but with insufficient information to advise councillors. Officers suggested the application be deferred so they could find the answers. One of the committee's issues was with highway improvements, and members wondered whether it would be reasonable to secure financial contributions from every developer that puts an application forward in Gunville to address the traffic issues. Part of the reason 2 other developments for housing in the area were recently rejected was dates showing the mini roundabout at the top of Carisbrooke High Street will exceed capacity by 2025, even without new housing built. Councillors suggested opening Taylor Road, connecting Gunville to Carisbrooke and Newport via Wellington Road, cutting out the roundabout. A sustainable transport contribution of £45,000 would be provided if the application is approved to offset any negative traffic impacts. This was earmarked to go towards the Gunville to West Wight cycle track and either the installation of a multi-use pathway or surfacing the existing public right-of-way. Officers said this would help people use alternative means of transport, but councillors asked if that money could be used in other ways. There were proposed charges to the layout of Gunville Road, where, if the scheme was approved, the priority flow system would be removed and replaced by a zebra crossing. Councillor Matt Price asked if a controlled pedestrian crossing with a raised bump could be looked at, as it would be a significant safety improvement and slow down traffic. Members asked whether safe cycling provision along Gunville Road could be examined. Isle of Wight Council Strategic Manager for Planning, Ollie Bolter, said they were issues the officers had not been able to answer that would have helped councillors in their decision.
Hello everyone, this is Steve reading a story from the Island Echo, headlined Esplanade apprentice Asa rises through the ranks to graduate as a Volkswagen technician. Asa Hewison joined Esplanade as a Year 10 work placement student from the Isle of Wight Studio School in 2016. But fast forward 5 years and he is now qualified as a full-time technician, one of the youngest in the UK. When he was just 15, Asa helped out on Wednesday afternoons and Saturday mornings. He was keen to learn about engines but was unsure about his career direction. His placement helped him to discover his passion for cars and decided that this was the career path for him. Once he had passed his GCSEs, Esplanade was pleased to offer him an apprenticeship based on dedication and enthusiasm. Asa's apprenticeship at Esplanade saw him working, training and learning 5 days a week on site with support from his colleagues. He also had the added benefit of taking home a modest salary. Now, 5 years since Asa began his journey with Cowes-based Esplanade, he has qualified as a Volkswagen technician. Matthew Williams, the Esplanade after-sales manager, said, Asa has worked hard to gain his certification and is now one of the youngest fully qualified Volkswagen technicians in the UK. He's a valued member of the team, and we hope he will continue to be so for many years to come.
This is Patrina reading an article from Island Echo. Man who stole 10 bottles of Jack Daniels from Asda ordered to pay supermarket back. 46-year-old Richard Sullivan has been ordered to pay Asda £340 in compensation after stealing 10 bottles of honey Jack Daniels from the Newport supermarket. Sullivan of Brickfield Close in Newport appeared before magistrates on Tuesday, charged with theft from a shop, a charge he pleaded guilty to at the first opportunity. The court heard that the previously unemployed 46-year-old, who is now self-employed, working on guttering and fascias, had entered Asda on St George's Way at around 15:10 on the 17th of October. CCTV recorded Sullivan walking around the store, picking up fizzy drinks, crisps and 10 bottles of Jack Daniels alcohol. The father of 3, who has previous convictions for theft, was then seen to walk out of the store without paying. He was challenged by security, but fled the scene. However, he was soon recognised from the CCTV footage as being banned from Asda and being an individual named on the shop watch scheme. Amy Hossel, defending, said that her client was under significant pressure due to outstanding debts and had a sheer need to make quick money. She explained that Richard did not intend to steal from the shop, but acted in the spur of the moment. A court heard from probation that 99 unpaid hours from a previous community order were still outstanding, as Sullivan was unable to leave his wife, Angela Sullivan, at home due to her mental health. Mrs. O'Sullivan appeared in court only last week, charged with possession of a Class A drug and a Class B drug. Magistrates handed Richard Sullivan a 12-month community order with 20 rehabilitation days and ordered him to pay £340.54 compensation alongside a £95 surcharge.
Ferry firm reminds passengers about new charges brought about by Pompey Clean Air Zone. From Island Echo, read by Chris. Wight Link is reminding its customers about charges they face when the Portsmouth Clean Air Zone, CAZ, comes into operation from Monday the 29th of November 2021. Cars and vans going to and from Wight Link's car ferry terminal in Gunwharf Road will not be charged. Drivers of these vehicles can continue to use Wight Link services as usual. Motorcycles are also exempt. The only vehicles to be charged will be older taxis, private hire vehicles, buses, coaches and lorries, HGVs. The charge will be £10 for taxis and private hire vehicles and £50 for HGVs that are older than Euro 6 if diesel and older than Euro 4 if petrol. Portsmouth City Council is introducing the CAZ as some areas of the city centre have levels of pollutants like nitrogen dioxide that are likely to remain above safe legal limits unless action is taken now. If you're not sure if you will be charged, you can enter your vehicle's registration number on the website www.travel.portsmouth.gov.uk to check any charges.
Record number of deaths at Isle of Wight's prison from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Elaine. A record number of inmates have died at the Isle of Wight prison in the last year. Ministry of Justice figures show that there were 11 deaths in the year to September, up from 5 last year. It comes as calls to include prison deaths in an inquiry into the government's handling of the coronavirus pandemic intensify. Francis Crook, Chief Executive of the Howard League for Penal Reform, said, "Prisons have been largely forgotten during this crisis, but the figures published reveal the devastation that COVID-19 has brought to people living and working behind bars and their families. A prison is the grimmest place to die. The full impact of the pandemic will only become apparent in the years to come. Tens of thousands of people have been held in overcrowded conditions or solitary confinement for months on end. It is almost impossible to fathom the mental distress that this will have caused. All of this year's deaths have been listed as natural causes. This year, HMP Isle of Wight has seen its highest number of deaths since records began in 2000. In that time, a total of 60 people have died in custody on the island. Nationally, the number of people dying in prison has risen by 40% over the last year.
This is Michael reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Remembrance Day mix-up in the West Wight over wreath-laying duties. A Remembrance Day foul-up led to bad blood in the West Wight over wreath-laying duties. The issue led to one senior councillor to consider resigning, saying he felt embarrassed by the confusion. Each year, the 3 parish and town councils in the area, Freshwater, Totland and Yarmouth, all lay a wreath at the chosen war memorial. This year's parade took place in Totland with representatives including the fire service and lifeboat. But missing from the service was a representative from Freshwater Parish Council, who usually send their chair. In a mix-up, though, Councillor Daniel James turned up at All Saints Church in Freshwater, despite prior arrangements, without his ceremonial chains and council-branded wreath. Councillor James said he received an email on the Friday before from another parish councillor saying he was expected at All Saints. When he attended on Sunday, though, and saw Vice Chairman Councillor George Cameron present to lay the wreath instead, he said he asked another councillor to attend Totland, but it was too late. Councillor James said he could not be in two places at once, but the administrative mix-up saw someone else lay the wreath at Totland later that day. Councillor Cameron, however, said he had been following previous tradition in an idiot-proof strategy when the chairman had to attend a different memorial service. It was claimed Councillor James took the council wreath from Councillor Cameron, who has since said he now feels as if he was not acknowledged or recognised, and admits he seriously thought about resigning. He said, "I felt embarrassed as people noticed what was happening. Little did I know there was no wreath presentation at Totland at all. I was very disappointed for the parish. It should not have happened. It is not a mistake or an oversight. It was set in place. As Vice Chair, I feel like I have not represented the people who elected me because of the way it turned out. People have come to me and asked why we were not there, but I find it difficult to explain. I just hope it does not happen again." When asked about Councillor Cameron's response, Councillor James said it was news to him and nothing had been communicated to him. Councillor James said the procedure had not changed. It was a simple mix-up. Councillor Cameron has said he will add an agenda item on the next meeting, so the matter can be clarified and that all councillors will know exactly what has happened.
Today is the 19th of November and I'm Morris.
And I am Imelda. And before we start the second part of the county press, here is this week's society news. The swimming group at Medina is every Monday. Leisure at Medina Leisure Centre at 1:30 p.m. until 2:30 p.m. The group have exclusive use of the pool and we're looking for new members. So if you're interested in joining, please call the office for more details. The cost is £5 for swimming. Transport is available if requested. Please call the office for more details.
Coffee and Chat is on every Wednesday at Millbrook House from 10 a.m. until 11:30, and it is only £1 to include the cake and coffee. Come along and spend time with members and staff discussing various topics, etc.
And on Thursday, our normal Mix and Mingle group will not meet at Millbrook House, but instead the members, along with volunteers, staff and trustees, will enjoy a Christmas dinner at the Isle of Wight College. We're very sorry, but this is now sold out and all spaces are fully booked. Thank you for your support.
Remember, we have our Christmas fair at Millbrook House next Saturday, on the 27th of November, between 10:30 a.m. and 12:30. We will have a variety of stalls and refreshments on offer, so it is a chance for you to empty out your drawers of any items you think would be suitable to sell and kindly donate to us for this event. As always, we are very happy to accept any donations of items suitable to either sell or use as raffle prizes.
And our monthly Striders group are meeting on Friday for a 3.5-mile walk around St Helens. If you would like more details, please do not hesitate to call the office.
Our annual story writing competition has now closed and entries are in for judging, but please remember the awards ceremony is on December the 6th at the Riverside Centre starting at 7 p.m. All welcome to come along for festive entertainment and to congratulate our award winners.
And now we go on to letters to the editor. And the first one is from Diana Noyce of Cowes. Build a bridge. I agree with Vix Louthian. The ferry service is the most unreliable I've ever experienced, and the floating bridge is non-existent. For the island to be in the 21st century, something drastic needs to be done. Build a bridge from East Cowes to Cowes. Why are the council not thinking of building a bridge from the mainland to the island? Electric cars are the way forward. We don't need these old boats that do so much damage to the environment. The whole island would benefit from these 2 points I have made. Wake up, Isle of Wight.
And this is a letter headlined Little Victories from Paul Knocker of Bembridge. And he writes, I am happy to report 2 encouraging incidents recently. First, in the Ryde branch of HSBC, yes, it is still open, they had a prominent new notice on the desk. Mask or no mask, it is your choice, but it is nice to see you either way. Second, I had to call NFU about car insurance. There was a very brief recorded message about privacy, no buttons to press, no endless apologies for the delay, no recorded music. The phone rang 4 times and was picked up by one of their team. He just needed my policy number, no date of birth or passwords. Everything was settled within 5 minutes.
And this one is from Matthew Ambrosini of Newport. I was pleased to read the letter from Pat Holland in the County Press of the 5th of November this year about the benefits of the 2-week October half-term. Like your correspondents, I am perplexed at the decision of the Alliance administration to scrap this school term structure without any engagement with parents or students, particularly given that they are the ones most affected. Aside from the benefits of being able to access cheaper holidays, there are also educational upsides. This is particularly the case for both A-level and GCSE students. Those of us are studying for upcoming exams or have done previously know the results of the 2 weeks. I know of many Year 13 students who were able to put the 2-week October half-term to good use. Not only did students get to spend some much-needed quality time with their families, but crucially were able to undertake additional revision ahead of mock examinations. In a 1-week half-term, this isn't as well accommodated. These mock examination results, especially for Year 13, are important as they are used to inform predicted grades that accompany university applications. Many Year 13 students are planning to submit these prior to Christmas. In recent years, Island Sixth Formers, unlike elsewhere in the country, have uniquely been able to enjoy this benefit. Why now take it away without even asking the views of the students? I feel sorry for the current Year 12, who, as things stand, will not benefit from this 2-week period in 12 months' time. It's time for the Alliance to start listening to those affected by their decisions.
Penelope Baker from Lake writes, Transport links not good enough. I was amazed to read Councillor Ian Ward's upset at the withdrawal of a Disneyland opportunity for Dinosaur Island currently in Sandown. Investors must ask themselves, is such a location viable? A Disneyland-style venture requires strong transport links connected to the mainland. As there are no obvious significant sustainable transport links to Culver Parade connecting to the mainland, how could a venture there work? No doubt Councillor Ward would have supported huge car parking. That would destroy the natural beauty of a scene where Culver Cliffs meet sea and beach to provide something precious, which should be respected, not polluted. I should also add, as a resident of the Fairway, I do not want traffic rerouted here. Councillor Ward has shown an interest in the monument roundabout at the head of the fairway, and I would remind him that climate action requires traffic reduction, not speeding up. A look at the result in Newport of £9.6 million spent on St Mary's roundabout leaves the question, what did that achieve? With regard to derelict hotels in Sandown, whose responsibility is that? I have written over a number of years about the disgraceful state of the block on Fitzroy Street, which stands within a minute's walk of where Councillor Ward lives.
This is from Steve Hawkins of Cowes, and this is a copy of a letter to Red Funnel. I am contacting you on behalf of both myself and a number of my fellow travellers who depend upon a reliable ferry service to and from the mainland for our work and subsequent livelihoods. Given the amount of money that you now charge for a season ticket, or worse, normal return ticket, your performance as a ferry service provider since the pandemic has been nothing short of appalling and is now affecting our ability to go to and realistic carry out our employment. We have a responsibility, first and foremost, to your customers, not your shareholders, and as such need to take a long, hard look at how you are failing the very people you rely upon to have your business in the first instance. We are playing with the people's livelihoods, and this must stop.
Smile too early, writes J. Partridge from Knighton. MP Bob Seeley and councillors celebrate £5.8 million cash boost. Written first in the county press on the 28th of the 10th and online. Roll on a couple of years and I predict there won't be any £5.8 million cash boost, but there'll probably be instead a £5,000 grant to conduct a feasibility study into the regeneration of East Cowes. The time to celebrate is when you have the money in the bank, not before. Oh, and by the way, any sign of the island deal money you promised prior to the last general election, Mr. Seeley?
And this is from Ian Pratt of Ryde. My wife and I have just returned from a lovely week spent in and around Sandwich in East Kent. We could not help but notice how clean and tidy everywhere was compared to the island. This morning I collected a large plastic bag of rubbish, including drink cans, plastic bottles, sweet papers, in just a few hundred yards along Selsdon Avenue and Apley Road. Earlier I had walked along the beach at Apley, and there were loads of cans, glasses, broken bottles, etc. I despair at times.
Mired in sleaze, writes Alan Neal from Freshwater. The Owen Paterson affair should be seen for what it is. Paterson was simply the fall guy providing Boris Johnson with the perfect means to try and disband the Government Standards Committee, lest it delve too deeply into the Prime Minister's lavish lifestyle and excesses often bankrolled by his chums. I am afraid my heart does not bleed for Owen Paterson, who I am sure will receive a peerage just like Zac Goldsmith, who provided Boris's latest holiday accommodation. Goldsmith, close friend of Boris, received a seat in the Lords shortly after losing his seat as a Conservative MP. The Tory Bullingdon boy backslapping Etonian elite have always been mired in sleaze. It's part of their DNA, with the rich pickings becoming greater and greater the higher they ascend in the Conservative Party. It has always been one rule for them and another rule for the rest of us. As we voters need to remember is to doff our caps and not ask too many awkward questions.
And the next letter comes from Steve Burton, who is the General Manager of Wight Building Materials in Newport. I would like to thank you for your coverage of our forthcoming planning application to extract sand and gravel from Palmer's Farm at Wootton. This application is absolutely critical to the way Wight Building Materials, formerly Bardon Vectis, operates as the island's largest and longest standing supplier of aggregate to the local business trade. It is also crucial to the island's ability to source its own indigenous sand and gravel. The alternative is to import such materials, probably sea-dredged, from the mainland. Given its importance, we are extremely keen to make sure the full facts of what we intend to do are put before the community and its elected decision-makers. Our announcement last week was one part of that process. We have also met Wootton Parish Council, and last night we are due to meet Whippingham Parish Council. Feedback from these meetings has been taken on board as we refine our proposals ahead of submission. As a quarrying company, we have worked with the community for generations, and I can assure residents that we will continue to do so throughout this process. If anyone has any questions about the plan, or if any group would like us to attend a meeting to discuss our proposals, then do not hesitate to contact me. Enquiries@whitebuildingmaterials.com.
Carol Crawford from Bembridge writes, "Brilliant show. Bembridge Little Theatre Company always gives good value for money, and this weekend was no exception. They produced a musical entitled Nonsense, a Broadway hit back in 1989. A very ambitious project, and Bembridge Little Theatre Company pulled it off beautifully. The talent shown was prodigious, with singing which raised the rafters, dancing both tap and ballet, and they even produced passable Brooklyn accents."
And the next letter is from R. Swinton of Ventnor. Southern Water charges customers more per litre for taking away water than they do for providing it. If they have been fined millions of pounds by the regulator for not treating this waste, have instead been simply discharging raw sewage into the sea, then why are they not repaying customers for the service they are not providing?
"Don't waste this golden chance to save Sandown," writes A. Jones of Sandown. "I, along with many Sandown residents and business owners, am incredulous that the current Isle of Wight Council can seemingly walk away from a possible investment in Sandown, purportedly of more than £30 million for the Dinosaur Isle site area, which would be one of the largest educational, academic and leisure investments on the island. Sandown is a holiday destination which is mainly reliant on visitors for its income. Underinvestment by successive administrations has left Sandown town, and in particular the area of the Canoe Lake, Browns and Dinosaur Isle, in urgent need of regeneration. An investment of this magnitude would surely encourage the development of our derelict hotels and improvements to the high street shops, as well as bringing much needed employment to the area. It does not seem that detailed proposals have been properly presented yet, due to the delays in the bidding process and assumptions on the future of Browns and claims of more plastic dinosaurs. Petitions are rarely organised to support things, only to make protests, and a comprehensive consultation process is needed in order to properly gauge requirements and opinions. The council seem open to finding another site for the park on the island, which does nothing to aid the need to regenerate Sandown. Why? This would seem to be a golden opportunity to coordinate development of the Canoe Lake, Browns and Dinosaur Isle area into a great facility for the benefit of the town and the island in general. Will our council carry out a proper review with full details of the proposal, or waste the possibility?
And the next letter is from Brian Hugh. I think it's Hugh, and I apologise to him if I've got the name pronounced incorrectly. He's from Greater Manchester. I am acting on behalf of the authorities at the United Nations Memorial Cemetery, Busan, South Korea, where more than 800 British servicemen are buried. The authorities there wish to obtain photographs of those servicemen interned there, and also of those who died but have no known grave. Copies of the photographs will be placed in the man's records and displayed on the walls of the Hall of Remembrance for all time. The following are just some of the young men from Hampshire and Isle of Wight area who gave their lives. Private Alan L. Saunders, Private Peter J. Davis, Ralph Archer, Private George F. Harris, he was of the Fusiliers, Basil L. Cox, Private John D. Heward, and Private Raymond T. Othen, Lieutenant Alexander Rennie Taliox, Corporal Royal, he was a corporal in the Royal Hearse, W. Hurst, Private Eric E. Harrison, who was a pilot, Stanley W. E. Ford, James Goodman, Derek Blair, Private Ronald J. Burton, and Private Donald L. Hobden. Please send a photograph to me at 116 Fields Farm Road, Hyde, Greater Manchester, SK1 43NP, or email B, the surname is HOUGH, 116 at gmail.com.
Plain speaking, writes Frederick Mew from Cowes. Re Richard Quigley's recent comments. How refreshing to hear a man talk straight, something this country seems to have forgotten how to. Everybody seems so frightened of their jobs. They may feel like speaking up, but don't. They think let somebody else do it. I want to keep my cushy job. Unfortunately, all of Westminster Palace feel that way. They like staying at home getting fat salaries for doing nothing. Someone else can sort the world out. So, Mr. Quigley, do you think Seeley will bother what you or any of us think? Call him and any of them as many names as you like. But well done, sir, for what you said.
And this is one about fireworks. This is from Reg White of Cowes. I would like to thank and congratulate the Isle of Wight Community Club, Park Road, Cowes, for the fantastic fireworks display on Saturday, November the 6th. It was a full half hour of fireworks, enjoyed by a throng of parents and children. Thanks should also go to the committee staff and their helpers who dealt with the car parking and the safety of pedestrians. They then went on to collect donations, ran the disco and clear up afterwards. Well done to all concerned. I even overheard a young mother explain to her daughter who Guy Fawkes was and why we were having fireworks.
Brock's Copse will be renamed Brock's Corpse, writes Penny Turner from Whippingham. Are Wight Building Services having a laugh? So, let's big up island tourism, cycling, rambling, dog walkers and horse riders to enjoy our island, and let's send gravel lorries up and down their route all day long. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Brock's Copse Road part of the coastal path and runs alongside an area of outstanding natural beauty? Or has this company failed to notice the blue signs at the top of the road? Or maybe one of the company hierarchy lives along Palmer's Road, as how on earth can that road already be excluded from the transporting of gravel and not the country lane? Palmer's Road heads straight out onto the main road, whereas ours doesn't. And what about the ancient bridge in the dip? It beggars belief. I guess because our road has less residents, we are easy to override. I do hope our council ward member is going to fight for us, and with us, as it seems, although Wootton contains the land involved, but Whippingham are going to be taking the punishment. However, on reading the article in the county press on the 12th of November, it certainly sounds to me as if the deal is already done. So let's say a sad farewell to the road's namesake and the squirrels that thrive in the surrounding trees, and just rename it Brock's Corpse Road.
And now we go on to Wight Memories by Kate Young. And this is a fresh perspective on the 1970 festival. Many of us have seen the iconic black and white press photographs from the Isle of Wight Music Festival of 1970. But now Island authors Alan and Tom Stroud have put together a book of more than 120 stunning, candid, mostly colour shots taken by 5 amateur photographers during the iconic music festival. Called the Isle of Wight 1970, A View from the Crowd, this beautiful book tells us how the festival came to be and is peppered with insights from festival organisers Ray, Ronnie and Bill Fook, as well as quotes from the many naysayers who complained to the county press. There are also comments to national newspapers by the then MP Mark Woodnut, who was outraged by hippies fornicating on the beach. In August 1970, hundreds of thousands of people flocked to the island to attend what was then and still is today the largest crowd gathered at a music festival in the UK. It was a remarkable moment in popular culture, with the hippie movement, the Love Generation and international rock supporters all gathering together for a long weekend of music under the sun at Afton. They came from far and wide. Indeed, press officer Peter Hannigan told television news crews that people had written from Asia and there were heavy ticket sales in Australia and charter flights from America. Peter said, "I should think 1 in 6, 1 in 7 people at the festival will be from overseas." At its peak, the crowd swelled in several 100,000, and the county press noticed that estimates of the attendance varied from 150,000 to 400,000. On the Sunday festival, MC Ricky Farr famously told the crowd that up to 600,000 people had come to the event, a figure organiser Ray Folk described as absurd. We've all heard the stories of how thousands of people climbed up onto Afton Down to listen to the music for free because the site was a natural amphitheatre, as well as tales of people streaming down into the beach at Compton to go swimming naked. But this incredible collection of photos shows the carefree joy of those who went to the festival. It captures the events very much as those who attended the festival would have seen it, from the commune of campfires, abandoned car parks and metal sheeting, referred to as Desolation Row, to the rolling inclines of Devastation Hill. And while press photos were monochrome, because newspapers had not progressed to colour in that era, the images of this book capture the colourful clothes. Among the amateur photographers of those work appear in this book is Harry Matthews, who was Alan Stroud's late father-in-law. Harry took photos on both the Sundays of the festival and a week after the event, when the clean-up operations were underway.
Eric Moth of Cowes took shots on the hillside, but also made his way to the beach at Compton, where hundreds of naked festival goers were frolicking in the surf. The third photographer is unknown, his or her treasure trove of colour slides having only come to light recently in a box that had laid forgotten in a cupboard for 40 years. This photographer captured scenes on site, as well as colourful shots of festival goers on Ryde Esplanade en route to Afton. Then there is the work of Ken Box, who was a popular art teacher at Carisbrooke Grammar School in the 1960s and 70s, who took around 200 photos on site during the 1970 festival. The last few images in the book were taken by Alan Stroud, who was just 19 at the time. In 2020, Alan and Tom Stroud published Rocking the Isle of Wight, intended to complement Ray Falk's definitive personal accounts of the festivals from a purely local and intentionally detailed perspective. The book is now out of print and is already a collector's item, but some of the photos used within it appear here, but in large format for the first time. After the publication of the Stroud's first book, a further cache of photos were discovered, and they appear in this new book for the first time anywhere.
And now we go on to My View, Catherine James. How many of you carry a photo of a loved one? An artificial printing photograph of your child, significant other, or adored pet? Paper curling at the edges perhaps, but the twinkle in their eyes still visible. It is more likely that your pictures are stored on your smartphone or uploaded to a server, images of you, your family and friends swilling around the cloud. Candid holiday snapshots in swimwear. That unflattering selfie you thought you'd deleted. A grotesque portrait displaying more chins than the Hong Kong phone book. Our faces might exist in cyberspace, but they still belong to us, don't they? Until recently, Facebook and other image wrangling software allowed us to tag these known to us in photographs. In doing so, we unwittingly helped train and improve facial recognition algorithms. By installing front-facing cameras to our phones, companies have warned us up to the unseemingly helpful concept of using our faces as a key. We can passively unlock our devices without the need to remember yet another pesky number or passcode. Most of you might be indifferent to or even advocate for a national visual identification system, citing, if you have nothing to hide, what's the harm? Biometric COVID-19 vaccination passports may come into this category. But what if you simply fancy going off-grid and buying an indulgent bar of chocolate, flowing for your clandestine lover, or a tot of alcohol without being digitally captured? It's harder than it seems.
My own face displayed incredulity the other day when, in the supermarket at the self-checkout, I realised it wasn't just my groceries which were being scanned. As I looked up from the basket, I saw my wide eyes staring back at me from a screen above the till. What was going on? Why was my mundane transaction on camera, then projected back at me by intrusive technology? In the before times, you could go to a shop, take an item to the till and pay cash, all steps anonymous. No loyalty card marketing analysis, no contactless banking to leave a trail of digital breadcrumbs, and certainly not an unconsented image of my shopping face. Supermarkets say facial recognition technology allows them to minimise the impact of crimes and improve safety for staff. The Information Commissioner's Office is rightly concerned about the private sector operating this technological in a quasi-law enforcement capacity. Privately run surveillance systems in shops are not necessarily affiliated to the police. It begs the question, if fingerprint and face identification data must be collected, is it better to be by the police or private companies? How about the council or social media platforms? I can remember when Big Brother's all-seeing eye was the stuff of science fiction, yet this week I learned that in North Ayrshire, children queuing for their school meals are only fed once their compliant face has been scanned and verified by the robot dinner lady. Normalising children to biometric surveillance for such a commonplace transaction, I'm not sure I can face it.
Well, we now go on to What's On. And the first What's On is on Sunday, and this is music. A remembrance concert for Ray and Rosemary Scovell. It's a ticketed event at the Medina Theatre, Newport, at 7:30. Excuse me. And there's more music on Monday. The 50th anniversary tour, another ticketed event, at Shanklin Theatre at 7:30. And Wednesday, there's more music. Platform 1 presents another ticketed event, Strings Bar and Venue in Newport at 7 p.m. Thursday, there's yet more music. Sexy Pretty Things, ticketed event, string bar and venue, Newport 7:30. And it says, tell us about your event, drop us an email and we will put it in the paper.
The Medina Theatre is hosting the 5-star Big Band at Christmas show at 7:30 on Friday, December the 3rd. The show promises all the favourite Christmas songs given the dynamic swing band treatment from Glenn Miller, Frank Sinatra, Basie and Nat King Cole.
And again at the Medina. At the Medina there is 5-star swing. Swing into Christmas with the unique 5-star swing big band. Enjoy all your favourite Christmas songs with the dynamic big band treatment from Glenn Miller. And Sinatra, Nat King Cole, jazzing up those jingle bells, as featured in London Leicester Square Theatre and BBC Children Need. This is Friday the 3rd of December, 7:30. Tickets are £22 and there are concessions. And then finally there's Blake, Christmas with Blake. Come and celebrate. Christmas is a magical time for friends and family. Blake are inviting you to come along and enjoy an evening full of song and cheer to celebrate the holidays. Don't just treat yourself, treat your friends and family too. Take time out of the hustle and bustle of life and relax to the harmonious sounds of the Brit Award-winning trio as they take you on a musical Christmas journey. And this is Friday, the 10th of December at 7:30, and tickets are £25.50.
And that concludes the section of What's On. On now to additional news. I have a headline here that reads Bronze Age axe fragment discovered. A late Bronze Age pocketed axe fragment and incomplete casting jet have been discovered in Kelbourne. The historic finds, dating from somewhere between 1000 and 800 BC, were declared treasure at a treasure inquest held at the Isle of Wight Coroner's Court. Louis Ferraro, Finds Liaison Officer with the British Museum, appeared before the coroner to present the discovery on behalf of the Isle of Wight Council. The 1996 Treasure Act requires people who discover artefacts made of precious materials to declare them and allow a museum to make an offer for the item before it can be sold. The axe head fragment from a socketed axe head was part of an axe head hollow on one end, so a piece of wood could be inserted. The court heard the casting jet was waste metal formed when molten metal is poured into a mould, and both objects were made of copper alloy. They were found by Mr. White on land owned by Miss Chapman on August the 28th, 2019. Coroner Caroline Summeray thanked Mr. White for obeying the law and declaring his discovery.
And a Shanklin man was fined £300 after being found in possession of cannabis and cocaine. Ashley David Smart, 37, of High Street, admitted 2 charges at the Isle of Wight Magistrates' Courts on Friday. Liz Miller, prosecuting, said police had visited Smart on an unrelated charge when they found him in possession of the drugs. The court had been given no details about the amount of drugs found, but Henry Farley, defending, said it was a small amount in line with personal use. Smart, a self-employed builder, said he was ashamed and determined never to end up in court again. He must also pay £85 cost and a £34 surcharge.
A county press headline reads Bus saved for now. A long-serving community bus has been saved, but only if people continue to use it. Ventnor Town Council had previously decided to scrap the service as it was being used by a low number of residents. It serves St Lawrence and Bonchurch and takes residents into the town centre, so for shopping and appointments. Councillor Brian Lucas introduced a motion supported by 5 other councillors to halt the termination process. The number 31 bus will continue via top taxis 2 days a week. Councillor Lucas told this month's meeting of the Town Council he was introducing the motion in response to concerns about the loss of service by residents. Councillor Steve Cooper welcomed the motion with some caveats, stressing the Town Council needed to be aware of the figures. Councillor Steph Toogood supported the motion, but said she was keen to see signage improved along with reliability. It was agreed to keep the service.
And this is by Laurie Little saying, the island's last remaining hospitality association has predicted a loss in trade if the Dinosaur Isle proposal is abandoned. The Shanklin Hotel and Accommodation Association, SHAA, released a statement saying the proposed decision of the Isle of Wight Council to abandon the proposal would result in a lot of local disappointment and a loss in the hospitality trade in the Bay Area and beyond. They said it would be a lost opportunity of a major tourist-generating project. Michael Dawson, president, said, "We are the people that speak directly to our tourists, and one of the most common comments we receive are what's happened to Sandown. The town and the wider Bay Area need some serious investment, and the Dinosauria proposal would make the difference as it's more employment, tourists and visitors. The right proposal could bring over so many more visitors, we do not need a revamped or mediocre idea taken from elsewhere. The Dinosauria proposal fits the Bay Area perfectly, with its fossil finds and the Dinosaur Isle collection, which will benefit as well. Let's not even consider this unique collection being moved away from this area and having yet another building to rot. We, our association, are open to consulting with the council." The statement came just a week after Councillor Ian Ward claimed Sandown had been abandoned over the rethink of the project. The ambitious plans for a Disneyland opportunity dinosaur-themed Sea Point scheme are set to be shelved by the Alliance administration. Councillor Julie Joan Evans, Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Business Development, said the new administration wanted to secure alternative investments that complemented the area's natural environment and unique heritage. She said the process to bring forward the generation of the Culver Parade area had complex challenging. The council is now looking for another site for the Dinosaurium project.
Leader of the Isle of Wight Council, Councillor Laura P.C. Wilcox, is temporarily stepping back from the council work to recharge her batteries. Councillor P.C. Wilcox left the Isle of Wight Council meeting on Wednesday after being taken unwell. A spokesperson for the Alliance Group yesterday, Thursday, said the thoughts of the group were with the leader, who had been working incredibly hard in recent months. She will, however, continue to undertake some key pre-existing comments. Councillor P.C. Wilcox, who is also the representative for Cowes Medina Ward, took office in May after the council elections. Councillor Ian Stevens, a former leader, was elected her deputy at that time.
Energy plant delays near 2-year mark. Another delay has hit the rollout of full-scale operations at the island's energy from waste plant on Forest Road. It is now expected to start more than 2 years later than first proposed. Due to unforeseen technical issues, the Energy Recovery Facility, ERF, will not start operating until January now. The Isle of Wight Council said during tests in the commissioning process, some systems in the plant were found to require upgrading, which had impacted the timescale. The completion date of the ERF has continually been pushed back, with the original start date supposed to be May 2019. Work started on the plant, which will use non-recyclable rubbish to generate renewable energy for up to 5,000 houses. In 2017, after planning permission was granted in 2016. Construction was suspended in March last year due to COVID, But Amy, the providers of the island's waste contract, engaged different subcontractors to continue the work. Following the delay, the Isle of Wight Council said the completion of the ERF was scheduled for April this year, then September, now into the new year. The ERF has started to process waste, though, and is currently undergoing hot commissioning, which tests all systems before it enters service. A council spokesperson said Amy had been using contingency facilities when necessary during the construction period, and performance levels continued to be above contractual targets for the amount of waste recycled and diverted from landfill. They said the island was still meeting its waste and recycling targets and remain in the top 15% of authorities for the amounts of household waste it recycled. The construction risk sat with Amy and the delays to the plant had not been at the expense of the Isle of Wight Council.
Bed blocking grows at St Mary's as pressure rises, written by Louise Hill. Bed blocking and a drop in standards at the island's only hospital has been seen as a result of the island's care crisis. Pressure has continued to mount for St Mary's Hospital and its staff since June, with bosses saying patient levels were very congested and very concerning. There's an average of 55 patients in St Mary's who do not need to be there, but there is no care available to safely discharge them. It has been revealed there are more than 300 job vacancies in the care sector on the Isle of Wight, nearly 8% of the workforce. The situation has been called a critical risk for the hospital by the Isle of Wight NHS Trust's Chief Operating Officer Joe Smythe, as it causes a lack of beds for those needing to be admitted and increased wait times in the emergency department. Overcrowding, patients being nursed out of bays and people being accommodated overnight in the emergency department as they wait for a bed to become available have all been reported recently to the Trust Board. Patient levels are remaining steady, with more than 5,000 people going to the emergency departments each month, but performance levels were declining. Between August and October, the number of patients seen and discharged or admitted in 4 hours has fallen from 81.4% to 76.5%. At last Thursday's meeting, Mr Smythe said staff had been outstanding and could not be working harder to manage demand. He asked islanders to use other avenues for support like 111 or GPs unless it was a real emergency. He apologised for the waits people may experience if they come to the emergency department, but asked for their patience and an understanding of the pressure the hospital is under. Dr Leslie Stevens, Community Director, said there seemed to be a disconnect between health settings and the outside world, as the outside world had gone back to normal. She asked islanders to continue to protect the NHS by following COVID guidance. Pressures will also be put on the hospital as the island enters winter, with increases in flu and other illnesses and changes made to COVID pathways in the hospital. Should additional bed capacity be needed at short notice, a contingency plan has been approved to open an extra ward, which could provide either 15 or 28 beds. Darren Cattle, Deputy Chief Executive, said winter was not going to be easy.
Well, the ultimate Isle of Wight pizza has been created by a celebrity chef. James Tannard scoured the island for the best local ingredients and released a foodie guide and video showing people how to create it for themselves. James has long been inspired by his many visits to the island, regularly selecting local produce for features on the menus of his restaurant, the Kentish Hare and the Barbican Kitchen. In conjunction with ferry operators Whitelink, James embarked on a delicious road trip in an electric car, gathering fresh produce from gin to garlic from some of his favourite local farmers, fishermen, country stores and distillery. The ingredients are Isle of Wight tomatoes bought from Farmer Jack's in Arreton. Isle of Wight cheese, Company Blue. Fresh crab from Ventnor Haven Fishery. Garlic from the Garlic Farm, Newchurch. Strong white flour from the Calbourne Watermill. Mermaid gin from the Isle of Wight distillery for a tipple on the side. James said, "I've always loved travelling to the island, so I was thrilled when Whitelink asked me to return on a foodie adventure. Getting the ferry is always an exciting start to the trip. Sitting on the deck with a drink in hand, breathing in the fresh air as you approach the beautiful island coastline is the perfect start to any holiday. From the moment you step ashore, you're never far from an amazing restaurant, pub, farm shop, market or brewery. The number of award-winning producers is remarkable, and I love sourcing fresh ingredients from such a special place to create new dishes for my restaurants."
This is an article by John Moreno, who writes, "Disgust as feces left at memorial." One of the island's oldest surviving war veterans has spoken of his heartbreak and anger of knowing human excrement had been left at his town's war memorial the day before Remembrance Sunday. Greentown Shanklin volunteers discovered the faeces in the memorial's enclosure in Shanklin Old Village while they were sprucing it up ready for the open-air service, which was attended by more than 350 people. It was a discovery that has left many in the town disgusted, not just by the act, but by the timing of it, and an emotive annual anniversary to respect the war dead. Alec Penstone of Hope Road was a Royal Navy sailor who took part in 10 harrowing journeys between England and Russia, known as the Arctic Convoys. The 96-year-old was the first to place a wreath at the cenotaph at Sunday's service. Alec, who is registered blind, was stunned and angered to learn about the incident. "What a terrible, terrible thing. It's bad enough for someone to do something like that elsewhere, but to do it at a war memorial at this poignant time of year is truly awful. Very sad," said Alec. "It seems for some generations what this country fought for has gone by the wayside. It shows their mentality." There was a similar incident at the memorial about 2 weeks prior to Saturday's discovery, and another just outside Shanklin's new library in Falcon Cross Road about 5 weeks ago. Esther Knight, volunteer for Greentown Shanklin, said she was horrified by the latest discovery. Esther unfortunately discovered the horror deposited outside the library in Falcon Cross Road, which adjoins a public toilet. "I was annoyed and disgusted. It's just not on. I expect someone got drunk and did it. Instead of paying to use the loo, they would rather spend the money on booze," she said. Former Shanklin Mayor Town Councillor David Williams said, "It is absolutely disgusting and an unpleasant job for green towns to have cleared up."
No GPs in the town. 2 bus journeys likely for Newport surgery patients. Newport and Carisbrooke are facing a future without a town centre's doctor's surgery. The 23,000 people who live in the town and adjoining villages could have to make the trip to an out-of-town surgery near Asda in the future. Plans have been revealed to relocate Newport Health Centre from its 2 surgeries at the Dower House in Pyle Street and Carisbrooke High Street, and the West Street practice is set to fully close its doors, moving all operations to Wootton. Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council was told the Carisbrooke facility was unfit for purpose, and the former practice partners of Dower House Surgery wanted to sell their building. This leaves the Dower House practice a year to find somewhere new before its contract runs out. Hampshire, Southampton and Isle of Wight Clinical Commissioning Group confirmed it was in very early discussions with the health centre. In looking at its future estate requirements, with the possibility of relocating its practices into one building to provide patients with improved access and services, said Managing Director Alison Smith. Instead of looking at alternative sites put forward by the NCCC and the Isle of Wight Council's regeneration team, councillors said developers engaged by Newport Health Centre, Assura, are favouring a greenfield site with enough space for a state-of-the-art building and a large car park. The Isle of Wight Council confirmed it is working with interesting parties, partners and agencies to help the practice find a solution to the situation, but was aware of the impact the move may have on the community, despite other sites in the centre of town being pushed instead by councillors, including building on car parks and the derelict land near Newport Fire Station on Copping Bridge. The preferred site is said to be on Godric Road next to Asda. The proposed site is Isle of Wight Council owned, but the authority was unable to confirm if a final offer had been made on the site. Concerns had been raised by NCCC, with Chair Councillor Jeff Brodie saying the move out of central Newport would be deeply disturbing and devastating for residents.
And finally, the Isle of Wight Society's Sarah Burdett writes, "Do you know when your house was built? Do you know who lived there before you? Many people have been inspired by the recent series on television where the social history of a single house is researched from the time it was built. Fascinating facts emerge about the people who lived in the house before the present occupants. Some houses were built to house workers at local industrial sites. The terraces in Alfred Street in East Cowes were constructed by the landowner who wished to employ brickmakers and builders. The 1871 census reveals one of these houses was rented by a brickmaker and his family, together with 4 lodgers, all brickmakers. The house only had 2 bedrooms, so accommodation must have been very crowded. Tide housing was very common. Farm workers might be provided with a cottage if they had a family. Otherwise, several single labourers would lodge with the farmer and his wife. Large houses often had a gatehouse, where an estate worker's wife would act as lodgekeeper and open the gates when required, perhaps earning 6pence a week in Victorian times. The coachman for the big house might have a cottage for his family. Sometimes these cottages had many similar architectural features to the large house. The large house may now have been demolished, leaving an ornate little cottage stranded in a modern housing estate. The first thing is to research the names of the people who lived in your house. This can be done by looking at the old street directories. A set of these are held at the County Records Office in Newport, and local heritage centres may have copies. Once you have a name, you can look that person up in the census records online. Prior to the 1880s, only the wealthier people were listed, although there are also some trade directories. If you can look through the census records from 1841 onwards, you will find it fascinating and lead you on to researching more about the person in the County Press archive online. During lockdown, some heritage groups have been transcribing census records for their area. Use old maps at the record office, at local heritage centres and online to establish an approximate date for your house. The population expanded rapidly in Victorian times, especially after the railways were established in the 1860s and 70s. Can you produce a house history book? A copy of this should remain in your house, so that when the house is sold, the recorded history of the building stays with it. And that concludes our talking news for today. So it's a goodbye from me, Maurice.
And a goodbye from Imelda. Have a nice weekend. 2 In Touch programmes follow. Last week's, followed by this week's. Scaffolding News follows the second In Touch. Touchscreen card machines. First In Touch. Recently, a number of In Touch listeners have told us they're finding more touchscreen card machines in their daily lives. These are the machines that do not have any raised buttons or tactile feedback. Supposedly, this type of machine is the future because most are operated by a similar technology as what is inside a smartphone. This gives a business a wider variety of payment options, and they can often be quicker and more reliable than the traditional machines we've all used to. But just how accessible are they when blind or visually impaired people are not able to use the contactless payment feature? We speak to 3 visually impaired people about their experiences on this. We ask a small business why they decided to opt for a touchscreen machine. We ask a manufacturer about whether accessibility is considered in the design process of their machines, and to the RNIB about what you can do if you are unable to use one. And the second in touch concerns gender identity. Gender dysphoria is a condition where a person experiences discomfort or distress because there's a mismatch between their biological sex and gender identity. It is sometimes known as gender identity disorder, gender incongruence, or transgenderism. On this episode of In Touch, 3 virtually impaired people tell us about their experiences with their gender transitions. We discuss why they've chosen this path, what have been the effects on their relationships with their family and friends, and how their visual impairments interact with their gender identities. And the presenter of this is Peter Wight.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Tonight, should we keep up with technology or should technology keep up with us? Tonight, we're going to be discussing changes in the way we pay for stuff. With the move away from cash to cards speeding up all the time, we've had to adjust to other methods. On a card machine with distinct buttons, tapping in your PIN number to confirm it really is your card isn't too difficult for people with good manual dexterity. Some would say that the arrival of contactless cards, now covering sums up to £100, has actually made things easier, although not everyone is comfortable with using contactless cards. But just as we've got used to these new methods, more and more In Touch listeners are telling us about another development which could leave you embarrassed and without your independence once again: the card reader with a touch screen. Well, we've heard from a number of people. I'm going to talk to some of them. Stephen Boswell from Southampton first. Just explain what happened to you.
I went into a local wine shop. When I came to pay, the card was in its sort of please verify who you are mode, so I had to type in the PIN number, but it was one of these touchscreen displays. I couldn't see it well enough to be able to hit the right numbers. Fortunately, I had enough cash on me to pay for the bottle.
Just to clarify, Stephen, you've got a bit of sight. Was there any way that you could have authenticated your card using that kind of screen?
Possibly if I dug out a magnifying glass and he'd slip the thing under the perspex barrier, and it just wasn't practical to do so.
I think you have a smartphone, which of course does have a touch screen. Just explain the difference in selecting numbers on that to selecting it on a screen like the one you've just described.
Well, with the touch phone, I've got an iPhone, there's an app called VoiceOver. So every time you tap an app or a number, a voice feeds back to you to tell you what you've hit. And then to activate what you're touching, you double tap it.
Phone. Double tap to activate. Phone. More options. Button. 0 plus 1 1.
With this touchscreen device, you really don't want it telling everybody else what your PIN number is as you tap it into the machine. So VoiceOver is not a viable option.
What are your wider concerns about this trend?
My biggest concern is that if that had happened in a large supermarket where I didn't know the assistant, where a number of people were behind me, and I wanted to buy more than £100 worth of goods, that would have been extremely embarrassing, having to wait for the manager to come and having people look at me, possibly not being able to buy my food.
Right, now we're also joined by Andrew Hodgson. Andrew, you've had a similar experience. What happened in your case?
Well, actually, it was similar. It was actually when buying alcohol, but this time it was a pub crawl that me and my friend were on, and he was buying me around. It was in a small pub. They gave him the card machine to put the pin in, and we suddenly realised that it was literally a slab on the top and he couldn't see it enough to put the pin number in. I've got some residual vision, so I had a quick look at it, but I could see where the pin was, but didn't want to take the pin number off him. So I actually ended up buying the drinks with the payment function on my smartphone, which is like more contactless. This wasn't a contactless card, so he literally had no way of paying. He didn't have any cash on him or any other way to pay other than to give his pin number to someone else.
So the only advantage we can see so far is it's a good way for blind people to get out of buying their own drinks.
Absolutely. Since that point, I have been doing some more research on this, and I've seen more of these machines crop up in the local area where I live, in some sort of cafes and sort of wine bars and a few other places.
You've worked, I think, in the finance industry, and you were working there at the time when chip and pin came in. How much were these kind of considerations thought about by the industry then?
So it was very strict, actually. We had to go a long way to make sure that the machines were usable. There was very specific formats of the PIN number pad, and they had to be completely accessible by people with not just vision impairments, but with other disabilities like people in wheelchairs, for the position and everything else. So I was really quite shocked to find these machines had suddenly started appearing.
Let me bring in one more example. Fiona, what was your experience?
I had a beauty treatment and I had a new bank card. With a lot of banks, when you have a new card, you have to use the card with your PIN for the first payment. Even if you're then going to do what I was doing and using Apple Pay after that, in order for that to be activated, you do have to have made one payment with your PIN. So I had the beauty treatment, came to the counter to pay, no problem, I thought. And then they said, "Oh, we've got this great new machine." And I was like, "There's no buttons on this. What? How can I pay?" And she said, "Oh, no, it's a touchscreen." And I said, "Yeah, I don't know where any of the buttons are on this." Luckily, the place where I'd been for the beauty treatment, they knew me. And I said, "Can I go along the road and get a coffee? Because I should be able to pay there and then come back to you and pay." Because, of course, I wasn't going to go away without paying for a start. I want to go there again. So the first thing I asked, because I suddenly thought, oh, well, I trusted the coffee place machine is going to be fine, but actually, will it be? Have they got a new machine recently as well? So the first thing I did before I even sat down was say, "Your card machine, does it have buttons or a touch screen? I shouldn't have to do that. That's ridiculous." And I just wonder if someone had something like Parkinson's and maybe their vision's not great either, and they're a bit shaky or something, these touch screens, they'd be a lot easier to press the wrong buttons, I would think. So I just think it's ridiculous, and it makes me angry because it just does seem like change for change's sake sometimes. Oh, look, aren't we modern? And it's like, well, yeah, but that's all very well, but it's not inclusive. So what's the point?
And I guess, although, you've all, to some extent, seen the potentially funny side of it, what this is embarrassing, isn't it, when it happens to you? However experienced, however long you've been dealing with being blind, it's an embarrassing thing to happen.
Well, it's discrimination. I don't think it's deliberate discrimination on the part of the companies, but on the part of the people who make the card machines. What are they doing? Why are they doing this?
One small business which has got a flat screen card reader is Colston's Bakery in Worcester, where one of our correspondents came across it. Peter Clark has been willing to come on and talk about that. He's the director of the company. Peter, why did you choose a flat screen card reader?
We change companies who provide the services for us, well, reasonably regularly, every couple of years or so, to get a good deal, basically. And it had come to that point that it was time to have a look at the market and see where you are, because obviously they charge you a percentage of every transaction and an authorization fee, and it can be quite a lot different between quotes. So it is always going to be an update at some point to change the machines. Sometimes you stay with the same company, sometimes you go to a different company. It just so happened that this time we had a very good offer given to us by the representative of the company who came around and showed us the machines, demonstrated them, pointed out all good points of them, the fact that they're modern, fast, efficient, and very reliable. So it was not pointed out to us at any point during that sales pitch that, oh, and by the way, there's an issue with this, because it never actually occurred to me that there might be. I thought that they were the future. We now need to go back to the manufacturer and find out what they plan to do about it, really.
Peter Clark, Stephen, Andrew, Fiona, thank you all very much indeed. So, what do the people who provide these card readers have to say about it? Well, Thomas Sabag is Vice President of Hardware and Industrial Design at SumUp, who offer a range of card machine terminals in over 30 countries. Tomer, first of all, just explain the range of card readers that you actually produce. How many using flat screens, how many with buttons?
We have about 30% of our card machines have a flat screen, whereas the rest have rubber buttons.
And why were the flat screen readers introduced in the first place? I mean, what is their perceived advantage over the ones with buttons?
Because it does offer to merchants broader range of features. It's maybe not one-to-one comparison to the normal chip and pin device we see in the supermarket, which is purely for payments. Our touchscreen devices are more of a smart POS that allows also the merchant to do more things before they reach the moment of the payment.
And I'm interested to know how much the industry thinks about this. I mean, were visually impaired people actually considered in the original design process?
So we do work with in the UK, it's RNIB, if I'm not mistaken, that we work quite closely with them, because it's also purely from a regulation standpoint, we need to comply with the certifications. There is, in our case, different solutions for this that we provide with these type of readers, which is like a plastic add-on to the device. So when we looked at this issue, it's not only about the pin, because when it comes to really making sure the customer knows everything, including the amount, it's not only the physical card machine, it works together with the mobile sitting on the phone.
One independent businessman we talked to said, nobody told me. He was quite apologetic about it, but nobody told me. I just wondered whether you point out to businesses when they purchase them what the possible access implications might be.
I think we can do better in terms of specifically mentioning how you would serve a visually impaired customer.
Well, I'm also joined by Dave Williams, who is the RNIB's Customer Experience Manager. Dave, when did the RNIB become aware that this was going to be a problem?
About 3 years ago, we started working with UK Finance and a number of companies who supply these touchscreen chip and pin machines to try and find ways to make them accessible. So it's got to be possible, and we've worked on a number of solutions. I think overlays have already been mentioned, perhaps using some sort of handwriting technique, but obviously not everybody can do that. Not everybody reads Braille. So we've got a system where we use audio output from the device to emit tones when your fingers are on the keypad, and you can use the cancel and OK buttons as sort of orientation. They are spoken out loud. So we've got ways to make these devices accessible. We're very keen to work with the industry, but there's a lot of work to do, as your contributors have rightly pointed out.
You say that it's a beeping system. I mean, does this give any information that might be sensitive when you're actually using it?
No, well, so the demonstration that I've got is of the device will announce the amount of the transaction in the same way that, a member of staff would obviously tell you that what the amount is for, but obviously you're getting that confirmed by the machine. So you've got the machine telling you the amount of the transaction. Then you can move your finger around the touchscreen, providing the accessibility mode is enabled, and the device will emit tones to let you know when you're on the keypad. And then if you're to either side of the 0, then you'll get cancel and OK announced. And then once your transaction has completed, then the device would then advise you that has happened.
I mean, we know you've been working with one of the organisations, PAX, which is a big provider. Do you now think that you've come up with a solution? Because I know they told us themselves, and in an article they mentioned that you needed about 17 tries before you actually got a system that would work, which makes you think, is the flat screen ever really going to be usable in this context?
It's a solution. Whether it's the solution for everybody, probably not. And there will be some people who'd be much happier with a chip and sign arrangement, and you can request that from your bank if you would rather sign for purchases. We've also heard about people obviously using their smartphone or smartwatch to, use Apple Pay or Android Pay. And believe it or not, places will still accept a check, and, signature guides and stuff like that are available. So I think we will adjust. It's going to be difficult. I think for those of us who are totally blind when we first encounter these things, there is going to have to be training, obviously, with merchants and with individuals. We're working on tools so that there will be opportunities to practice, because, of course, you don't want the first time that you use this to be in the busy supermarket or in a pizza restaurant on a Saturday night,
And having a solution with one company is all very well, but the problem is there are lots of companies selling or renting lots of different machines. So the chances continue to be high that people like Stephen, Fiona and Andrew never know when they're going to find one that they can't use.
So we've been working with UK Finance, who represent about 300 companies in the UK. We've group tested, I think, 5 different models of machine with accessibility features. But obviously there are machines out there that are problematic, and we would urge anyone who finds themselves in that situation to get the model of the machine, tell us where it was, because you might have an Equality Act breach there that needs looking into, and merchants do have a responsibility to make sure that they're making reasonable adjustments to provide equal access to their products and services.
We're going to hear more about this, aren't we, Dave? Dave Williams and Toma Sebag, thank you both very much indeed. And now, still on inclusion, a bulging inbox prompted by a discussion a couple of weeks ago on how well a sustainable lifestyle and full inclusion for disabled people could coexist. A lot of you picked up on whether measures to encourage cycling was affecting the safety of visually impaired and other pedestrians. This first, from Leslie Scoyles, was typical.
You talked about cycle lanes and floating bus stops, but where I live in Edinburgh, the main problem in my experience is cyclists riding on the pavements. And by this, I don't just mean cutting across the pavements at a junction or, occasionally veering off a cycle lane. I mean people cycling for considerable distances on the pavements of main roads, side streets and on paths in parks. On the occasions where I've tried to engage with these people to point out to them that it's actually an offence to do this, I either get ignored, sworn at, or just stared at in confusion. I don't think there has actually been one single occasion that I've left my house in the past year where I've not encountered at least one pavement cyclist. In fact, it's often as many as 6 or 7. It's now getting to the point where I'm very nervous about even stepping outside of my front door.
And then this from Mary G.
Here in Stirling, the council's decided to make many pavements shared between pedestrians and cyclists. There's no cycle path, just a blue circle on some lampposts. I pointed out that the blue circle with a logo of a walker and a cyclist is of little help to the visually impaired, but there was no interest in making any change. We now have up to 5 teenagers cycling in a group along the pavement after school, with nothing like a highway code to give rules that all should follow.
But there is another view on the need to encourage cycling and electric cars in the interests of the planet. This from regular In Touch listener Alex Poppleton. Not so much an email, more a howl of rage.
It's such a shame that you're criticising sustainable measures that are tackling environmental impacts which are changing the lives of everyone on the planet. It's ridiculous to join the petrol lobby with predictable criticisms of electric cables and not being able to hear electric cars. Is it really better to be deafened with motorways full of engines using hydrocarbons, prematurely killing thousands of people? It just came over as whining, ill-informed and Luddite. The comment that cyclists are prioritised over pedestrians doesn't hold water at all. It's just a question of helping pedestrians to get used to them and creating nationwide conventions. Perhaps you should be thinking about how people with sight issues are going to escape from increasingly extreme weather rather than criticising efforts to improve cycling.
And just before we go, a lovely note to end on. Last week we heard from musician Michael Stimpson, who told us about the disease which, out of the blue, resulted in a 4-month-long coma and the loss of his sight. And that resulted in his taking up composition rather than playing. Well, this email came from Nora Flanagan. She said, "I was so pleased to hear Michael on In Touch tonight. My friend and I cared for him while he was unconscious in 1977. We often speak of him with fondness, and we were so pleased to hear him and hear and see what great things he's done." Well, we've put them all back in touch with each other. From me, Peter Wight, producer Beth Hemmings and studio managers Sue Stone Street and Philip Halliwell, goodbye.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. The idea that someone can feel so uncomfortable in the body into which they were born that they feel compelled to take steps to change it is something which is receiving increasing understanding. It's called gender dysphoria. Figures on this from the Office of National Statistics are imprecise. It's estimated in the UK there are between 200 and 500,000 transgender people. But transitioning gender is still far from being universally accepted, and even amongst those who are sympathetic and supportive, many admit to being left with a host of questions unanswered. Well, tonight we've invited 3 visually impaired people to explain why they've chosen this path, what have been the effects on their relationships, and whether their blindness or partial sight has been a factor. In a moment, we'll hear from Connor Scott Gardner, who has only recently come out as a transgender male, and Sarah Stevenson Hunter, who transitioned in 2013. But first, Emily Brothers explained to me the steps that led her, in 2006, to tell her then wife that she could no longer live as a man.
I've always felt female. I have always had that inner sense. And I grew up at a time in a working class, socially conservative family where in the 60s and 70s, you didn't have those kinds of conversations. So I kept it very much to myself. And that was very challenging in terms of my own mental health, my own sense of being and awareness. And I went on and had a successful career, married, had 2 children. But that inner feeling of being female was always with me. And it was only really in the 1990s when I was able to get independent access to information through the internet, etc., that I was able to actually realise that I wasn't the only person in the world who felt like this, and there was a pathway to being a woman.
And you talk about those inner feelings. One journalist in particular thought it would be funny to question whether a blind person would have a sense of their gender. I think we can dismiss that as puerile, but can you describe what it was that you knew that made you so determined to change it? You know, given the amount of aggravation that you must have known was bound to go with it.
Well, I think it was very much about how I felt, about my behavioural characteristics and other people not understanding really how I was supposed to live as a male, feeling on an everyday basis that was a real challenge in terms of just dealing with the norms and the stereotypes of being a particular gender within the binary of male and female. And it increasingly just wasn't working for me. And all those expectations about norms and society, which just didn't gel with me. And once I did transition, it all fitted together.
Obviously, one of the things being in touch that we're interested in is what's special to this experience for a visually impaired person. I think you remember the first time you left your home as a woman. You remember that quite vividly, don't you?
Yes, I do. It was terrifying because you want to go out and just be like any other woman, but you fear other people's reactions. You don't want to be mocked and ridiculed. And I went into central London on the tube, and that was quite liberating because as a blind person, getting assistance from the staff and them radioing ahead and saying, can you meet a visually impaired lady at Stockwell was empowering because that person interacted me like the woman I was seeking to become in that journey. And so that first trip out, although it was terrifying, I returned knowing that I could do it and it was the right thing to do.
You mentioned your socially conservative family. I just wonder, can I ask you, how did your family react to your transition?
Not well, and the relations ever since have been distant and infrequent, very much about what would the neighbours think. My marriage broke up, although my former wife now is my best friend, and we have 2 children. They have worked through what has been a difficult time over the last 15 years, but they are accepting. And in fact, my son not long ago said to me, if you hadn't transitioned, I wouldn't have known this very different type of person. I wouldn't have known Emily, and that would have been quite sad.
And your children actually played a part in defining who you were, didn't they? A rather special part?
Yes, so in the early days when I talked to them about how I felt and the journey I was going through, we talked about different options for my name, and they were keen that I should be called Emily. They said that the definition was industrious, which they said describes the type of person I am.
And in a way, I'm just wondering how much you expected when you made that decision to have that relationship with your children and indeed with your wife, as she was at the time.
It was something that I was very fearful of losing my relationship. And indeed, when you go through this kind of experience, you have periods of being very depressed. And I did have times when I was suicidal, and at one time was very close to it. And I have talked about walking to the sea later one night, and it was only that thought of my children that brought me back, that was really the thing that I clung on to. And all these years later is what is my real purpose in life, is supporting them and my grandchildren.
Emily, for the time being, thank you, and do stay with us. I'd like, though, to bring in now Connor Scott Gardner. He's a disability rights campaigner who, similarly to Emily, took the decision to publicly come out, in his case, as a transgender male. Well, we'll get to that decision in a moment, but first Connor explained why transitioning gender was a necessary step in his life.
It really started with a lot of discomfort around my body and various other things, and it's really easy to kind of pass that off as body insecurity, and I think there's probably layers of that too. So it started off with me really thinking about certain areas of my body I wanted to minimize or change, and I kind of sat with that for quite a while actually, and asking myself a lot of difficult questions. And it really took years really of thinking about this to kind of put various pieces together and say, I think this is actually what's happening here, and kind of culminated in me coming out, I suppose.
And so was there one thing then that made you think, OK, this is the moment, I'm ready and I'll deal with whatever comes up?
Yeah, it really, really happened very rapidly, the process of deciding that I had to kind of publicly come out. I just couldn't hold it in any longer, and it was quite impulsive is in my decision to come out at that moment. I hadn't sat down and thought what would be a good time to come out. It was actually a terrible time to come out. I was in the middle of writing an essay to a deadline, and I was really stressed, and I was like, this is not the time. If I'd sat down and had a good think, I wouldn't have done it then. But I just couldn't not. And I think perhaps that's something that happens to people is they get to a point where it just becomes this thing that they're carrying around with them. And actually it's better out in the open and face whatever consequences come than holding it in.
You've made the changes which mean that you're asking people to think about you differently and address you differently. Are you also contemplating, if you like, more physical changes? I mean, are you contemplating surgery, for instance?
Yes, I am. And it takes time. So unfortunately, in terms of every aspect, the NHS is just completely overwhelmed. And I really feel for everyone there. What this does mean is that there's huge waiting times for NHS services, even to get an initial diagnosis to say, right, you are actually a trans person, you can start taking hormone replacement therapy, which even to get that takes years and years. Your initial appointment could be 3 years away from when you first get referred. So I have chosen to seek out a private referral, which still cuts it down to a year, which is still quite a long time. And that would only be to start hormones. They recommend to be on hormone replacements for a year or so before you undergo any surgery, just because that does make changes to your body. So it is something I'm looking at in the future.
Are there particular challenges for a blind person when going through a gender transition?
One thing that's the same, but perhaps feels more drastic for trans people is access to cultural things, so like clothing choices. A lot of sighted people will look on the internet and think, what kind of look do I want? But obviously I was taught to dress as a girl. But there are things, if I ask someone in a restaurant, oh, can you show me where the bathroom is? If there isn't a disabled bathroom, which I'd probably use just because it's not gendered, so I don't have to kind of deal with the stress of that, the person showing me where it is would probably presume which bathroom I wanted. So I think you have to kind of think, oh, I'm going to have this conversation with someone, or potentially have this conversation, when perhaps I wouldn't have to if I could see. There's so much paperwork as well. And as we know, lots and lots of government paperwork is not that accessible.
Because your medical records all have to be changed, presumably.
Yeah, so I had to create a deed poll to change my name, sending letters to HMRC, and some people, you can do things online. Some are like, oh, well, we want a printed letter. Just the standard process of being a blind person and having to send printed letters, I sometimes joke that it's almost a good thing I have to wait a year for my first appointment, because it gives me at least time to put all my papers in order so I can go with them organised by then, hopefully.
Now, you wrote a tweet announcing your trans status.
Yeah.
Why did you want to disclose this publicly?
I chose to because I already had a public platform. What I didn't want to do was close my Twitter account, close my blog, and try and start from the beginning and hide who I was. And that is the decision some people make for their personal safety as much as anything else. But I had to come out publicly or stop doing the work I'm doing. And it's definitely a fraught time politically around trans rights at the moment. So that's added a bit of a tense layer to things. But in terms of the reality of it, no, I didn't really feel like I had a choice in the end.
Connor Scott Gardner, thank you very much for joining us. I want to bring in Sarah now, Sarah Stevenson Hunter, because Sarah, you lost your sight entirely, I think, but you began your transition after that. And I guess you knew at that point that you wouldn't see yourself post-transition. What were your feelings about that?
For me, I've had vision problems since I was a child, lots of health issues. That was probably something that kept me from transitioning earlier on, because I would say I didn't have the emotional or mental capacity to deal with my gender feelings. But when it came to beginning my transition, it was after, I'd lost my dad a few months earlier, and then I lost all my vision. And for me, I describe that as my tidal wave moment. It was just this period when all these things in my life that I'd been trying to fight against and run away from, in particular feelings about my gender, I just thought, you know what, I can't run anymore. And I did know that, yes, I was going into gender transition, not being able to see myself, how I looked. So that whole sense of, how I look to others was important, because obviously we live in a sighted world. But for me, it was more about my inner sense of self and who I am.
You've said, I think, that the combined impact of being disabled and a transgender woman has been like sort of navigating in a state of hyper vigilance.
Yeah.
Could you explain what you mean by this?
When I'm out and about, although I generally pass, as the phrase is.
Pass meaning being accepted as
yes,
what you want
meaning,
to be accepted.
Yeah, being accepted as a woman. Every interaction, every place you go, you're never quite sure if someone's reaction to you is going to be because you're blind or because you're trans. And I guess there's still that sense when I meet somebody that they're going to suss me out and find me out. And it's just that double-edged sword of people's attitudes towards you as a blind person and then as a trans person. I guess for those that don't understand, this isn't a lifestyle choice. You know, being trans, it's something at the core of who you are.
I'd like to bring back Emily Brothers for this question and put it to both of you. Because we are in touch, I'm interested to know how other visually impaired people have reacted to you both after your transitions. I mean, for a start, voice is what we as blind people often, well, usually, use to identify someone else. So how did people react to you, Sarah? I mean, you had some vocal training, didn't you?
The voice is a funny thing because, as you say, you know, as blind people, we very much rely on the voice. And obviously, when you're in a setting with a group of blind people, you know, they ask, what's your name? And you say your name's Sarah. And you can just hear the pause thinking, what did they say? But, I mean, I never had any nastiness or negativity. And actually, I will tell you one funny story. So my last guide dog, I was in class with another person, but I met that person a few months later at a trans support group, and it turned out we were both trans and beginning transition. So at first you think there can't be many blind trans people out there, but since then I've met the likes of Emily and a few other people, and you know, we do exist. We're a bit of a rare breed, but we do exist.
And Emily, because you've been quite involved in the politics of blindness and partial sight with your work with the National Federation of the Blind and being subsequently selected as a Labour parliamentary candidate, how did visually impaired people that you know and work with react?
On the whole, people have been very positive. There have been some difficulties with a few individuals. So, like Sarah, then there are things you go through with voice training and
scaffolding and Skips news the week commencing the 22nd of November. In the Ventnor area, 16 Pier Street, Miramar Court, Hamborough Court, and the Skips on the outskirts of South Bank, Park Avenue.
And in the Ryde area, Fox's Estate Agents, High Street, Arcadia 10 Esplanade, 2 French Franks, St Thomas's Square, Jack 75 Union Street, and Skips will be at 42 St Michael's Avenue.
In the Freshwater area, 4 Moa Place, Double Dragon, 7 Tennyson Road.
And in the Newport area, Stainless Games 130 to 132 High Street, the Old Mills and Cross Lane, Red Squirrel Pile Street, A.H. Cross and Company 15 to 16 Key Street, Vision Express 120 High Street, The Man in the Moon 16 to 17 St James's Street.
Onto the Cowes area, 3 York Street, the Old NatWest Bank 104 High Street, Cowes Conservative Club 3 Beckford Road, Jersey Cottage, Market Hill adjacent to Sun Hill, and Fountain Inn on the High Street.
And in East Cowes, there's only Skips at 17 Clarence Road.
And finally, in the Yarmouth area, Little House High Street.